She's a danger to my children, my daughter-in-law told the judge, right there in family court with everyone watching. At 80 years old, after a lifetime of raising, nursing, and loving, suddenly I was the villain in my own family's story. I'm Candace Miller, and I never imagined I'd be fighting for the right to see my great-grandchildren, or uncovering a truth so disturbing it could tear everything apart. What would you do if someone tried to erase your place in your family, your history, your love, your voice? Tell me. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by the people closest to you? Let's talk about it in the comments. Your Honor, with all due respect, Candace Miller is a danger to my children. The words rang out in the silent courtroom like a bell struck too hard. Rebecca's voice was sharp, deliberate, and coated with false concern, the kind of concern people wore like perfume when they needed others to believe them. I felt every syllable land on my chest like a stone. I sat on the wooden bench, spine stiff against the chill of the courtroom. My hands, thin and veined with years of use, clutched my old leather purse, a gift from my late son Michael. It was scuffed and faded now, but it had always made me feel grounded. Today, it was all I had to hold on to. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Someone coughed. The bailiff shifted his weight from one leg to the other. I could smell old coffee and paper. These small, tangible details grounded me, barely, as my world cracked open in front of strangers. Rebecca stood at the center of it all, perfectly put together in a tailored navy suit, her blonde hair swept into a bun so tight it looked like it might snap. Her posture was confident, her tone calculated. She looked like the ideal grieving widow, the protective mother, everything I was not. Last month, she continued, glancing at her attorney, she nearly set her kitchen on fire. She forgets to take her medication. She tells the children disturbing stories, nightmares, confusion. My daughter Lily hasn't slept through the night since Christmas. I blinked hard, willing my breath to steady. What she said wasn't false. It was distorted. A grease fire I'd quickly put out. One missed pill when she'd begged me to rush over and watch the kids. And the stories? They were about their grandfather, Michael, her late husband, my son. I spoke of him with love because I thought they had the right to know who he was. Mrs. Miller, do you have legal representation today? Judge Peterson asked. His voice was neutral, his tone practiced. I looked up and met his eyes. He seemed younger than I'd expected, 50s maybe, but his gaze was tired, the kind that had seen too many fractured families and too little reconciliation. No, Your Honor, I replied. My voice trembled slightly, a thin wire stretched too tight. I didn't think I'd need a lawyer just to see my great-grandchildren. Rebecca's lips curved in a smile, just a flash before she returned to her expression of maternal concern. Her attorney leaned over and whispered something in her ear. She nodded once, then he stepped forward. Your Honor, he said smoothly, unfolding a thick folder. We've compiled several examples of Mrs. Miller's recent behavior. We're requesting limited to no contact until a full psychological evaluation can be performed. I could feel the heat rising to my face. The words in that folder could be anything, twisted, manipulated. For months, years even, Rebecca had been pulling away. Ever since Michael's accident, she'd made sure my time with Joey and Lily was less frequent, more supervised, more controlled. The judge took the file, adjusted his glasses, and began flipping through the pages. His pen moved swiftly, pausing now and then to underline, to annotate. My heart pounded. Mrs. Miller, he said without looking up, you may respond. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out at first. Then finally, with all due respect, Your Honor, what she's saying is not true, or not in the way she's telling it. I took a breath and looked at Rebecca, directly this time. I've helped care for Joey and Lily since the day they were born. When Michael died, My voice caught. I swallowed. I became the only connection they had to their father's side of the family. I never wanted anything more than to be part of their lives. Rebecca's lawyer stood. Objection. Irrelevant to the matter at hand. Sustained, the judge said firmly. I sat back, feeling a strange numbness settle over me. I could hear the faint scratching of the judge's pen again. The hush of the courtroom pressed in around me. My eyes drifted to Rebecca's handbag as she reached inside for a tissue. That's when I saw it. A small paper slip fluttered to the floor near her feet. She didn't notice, but I did. I leaned forward slightly, squinting. A prescription label. My eyesight wasn't what it once was, but the name printed in bold letters was one I hadn't read in decades. Ipecac syrup. My stomach twisted. The room fell away for a moment. Ipecac had been removed from most homes years ago. In the wrong hands, it was dangerous. The kind of dangerous you didn't talk about lightly. Why would Rebecca... The judge cleared his throat, snapping me back to the present. Mrs. Miller, is there anything further you'd like to add? My grip tightened on the purse. My fingers dug into the soft leather. That name, that label, it wasn't just a coincidence. I'd worked too long in pediatrics not to recognize the signs, the hospital visits, the mysterious illnesses, the bruises, the whispers I'd ignored. There was more to this. Your Honor, I said, my voice a shade firmer now. I sat up straighter. There's something about Rebecca you need to know. For the first time since the hearing began, Rebecca's face shifted. Her lips froze mid-smile. Her hand hovered near her bag. The judge paused. His pen stopped mid-stroke. He looked up. The room was still. Even the buzzing lights seemed to hold their breath. Was I truly dangerous, or just inconvenient to silence? I wasn't sure yet which answer frightened me more. Candy, how did it go? Margaret's voice cracked through the old landline, each syllable carrying a warmth I hadn't realized I needed. I turned away from the living room window where rain tapped against the glass like it had something urgent to say. The courthouse still lingered on my skin. The cold benches, the artificial lighting, the sound of Rebecca's voice declaring me dangerous. I slid down into the armchair near the fireplace, the springs groaning softly beneath me. Terribly, I said. She's trying to cut me out completely, said I'm a danger to the children. That's absurd, Margaret replied, her indignation rising instantly. Those kids adore you. I know, I said, but that didn't stop her from making it sound real, and the judge... He listened. I let the silence stretch for a beat, then added, she dropped something. A prescription slip. It was for Ipecac. The other end of the line went silent. I could picture Margaret's expression, sharp nurse-trained eyes narrowing as the implications settled. She's still using Ipecac? She finally said, her voice dropping an octave. That stuff was practically banned for home use. You think she's... I don't know what to think, I interrupted, rubbing my temples. But something's wrong. Joey and Lily keep getting sick in ways that don't make sense. It feels familiar, but I didn't want to believe it. Candy, her voice softened. You know what that could mean. Yes, I whispered. Munchausen by proxy. Saying the words aloud made them more real than I was ready for. I stood and walked to the hallway. The photo of Michael on the shelf caught my eye. His graduation cap slightly crooked, that bright, easy smile that hadn't changed much over the years. He looked so alive, so trusting. What had he seen before the end? I turned toward the closet and reached for the top shelf. The box was still there, dusty and taped shut, untouched since the week after his funeral. My fingers trembled as I carried it to the kitchen table. The teapot let out a faint whistle in the background, but I didn't move to stop it. I lifted the lid of the box, revealing his belongings, an old flannel shirt, a watch with a cracked leather band, and at the bottom, his laptop. I paused, hands hovering. It felt like opening a door I wasn't sure I had the right to walk through, but I reminded myself what was at stake. Joey. Lily. The truth. The laptop was scuffed but intact. I plugged it in and pressed the power button. The screen flickered once, then lit up dimly with a login prompt. I stared at it for a moment, then typed in his wedding anniversary, March 14th. The screen blinked, and I was in. His desktop was a mess. Icons scattered, tabs still open, emails left unread. I clicked into his inbox and typed Rebecca Hospital into the search bar. Several emails populated. I scanned the subject lines until one thread caught my eye. Between Michael and someone named Dr. Harriet Lewis at Children's Memorial. My heart began to pound. Dr. Lewis, Michael had written. I'm concerned about how often Joey's been hospitalized. Every time I ask Rebecca about it, she brushes me off or gets defensive. I'd like to review his full medical history, quietly if possible. Dr. Lewis had responded kindly, suggesting a meeting the following week to go over the records, but there were no replies after that. I checked the date. March 10th. He died. March 11th. The air around me felt heavier. I clicked through a few more messages, seeing patterns I hadn't noticed before. Notes from Michael's colleagues about Rebecca missing appointments, Joey being sick again, and Lily's unexplained fevers. Michael had started to see the truth. The front door opened suddenly, and I jumped. It was Andrew Wright, Michael's best friend since college. He looked the same as always, just with a little more gray at his temples. Margaret called me, he said, stepping inside and setting down his umbrella. She's worried about you. She always is, I said, trying to smile. Come in. I have something to show you. We sat at the kitchen table. I turned the laptop toward him, the screen still glowing softly, rain still tapping at the window. I think Michael knew, I said quietly. About Rebecca, about what she might be doing to the kids. Andrew leaned in, scanning the emails. His brow furrowed. These are from just before he died? I nodded. He was scheduled to meet with Dr. Lewis the day after the accident. He leaned back slowly, exhaling through his nose. He knew, he murmured. He was starting to put it all together. The laptop fan hummed steadily, the sound suddenly eerie in the quiet room, like breath from a ghost, a whisper from the past that had waited too long to be heard. Did I fail to see the signs that killed my son? I asked, more to the room than to Andrew. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at me, eyes full of the same grief I carried. Maybe the truth had always been there, hiding between hospital visits and kind smiles, masked by grief and trust. We'd both missed it, but I wouldn't miss it again. Grandma Candy, Joey whispered, his lips barely moving against the hospital pillow. Mom gives me special medicine, not from the doctor. I froze. His voice was thin, fragile, like the translucent skin under his eyes. The monitor beside his bed beeped steadily, each tone cutting through the antiseptic air of the emergency room. I leaned closer, brushing a damp curl off his forehead. What kind of medicine, sweetheart? I asked, my voice soft and steady, though my hands trembled at my sides. It tastes bad, he said, really bad. Then I throw up. Mom says that means it's working. I forced myself not to react. The way he said it, innocent, matter of fact, twisted my stomach into knots. There was no fear in his voice, only confusion, as if this was normal, as if this was love. Earlier that evening, I'd been pouring tea in my kitchen, trying to make sense of the emails I'd found on Michael's laptop when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Mrs. Miller, this is Tara from the hospital. Joey is in the ER again. Rebecca just stepped out for coffee. Room 304. Come quickly. I didn't hesitate. Detective Suarez had arrived just minutes after I called her. She was already in her car when I stepped onto my porch, coat barely on, keys in hand. She's back in the hospital with one of them again? Suarez asked as we pulled out of the driveway. Her eyes were sharp, focused. Joey, I said. Tara thinks something's off. Said she saw Rebecca by his bedside, with a syringe. Suarez didn't speak after that. She just pressed the gas harder. Now, inside the hospital, Suarez stood just outside Joey's room behind the plastic curtain, pretending to flip through a clipboard. Tara had helped distract the nurse on duty, giving me a few precious minutes alone with my great-grandson. Joey, I said gently. "Has your mom ever told you not to talk about the medicine?" He nodded. "She said it's a secret. She said it makes me stronger, so I shouldn't tell anyone. She gets really mad if I do." His eyes flicked to the door as if expecting her to appear at any moment. I swallowed hard. "Do you know where she keeps the medicine?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes in her purse. Sometimes in the kitchen behind the cereal. But she hides it when people come over." "Okay," I said, brushing his hand with mine. "You're being very brave, Joey. Thank you for telling me." Behind me, Suarez stepped closer and tapped her phone twice. The screen glowed faintly in her hand. She was recording. "Joey," she said gently, stepping just inside the curtain. "I'm Detective Suarez. Do you remember me from before?" Joey nodded slowly. "I heard you've been getting medicine that makes you sick. Do you know when you had it last?" He looked at me, uncertain. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said. "You can tell her." "This morning," he whispered. "Before school, Mom said I needed extra today because you were trying to take me and Lily away." I felt the air leave my lungs. The EKG beeped steadily beside us. My hand found the rail of the bed and held tight. Outside the curtain, the hallway bustled with the low chaos of a busy hospital. Somewhere, a baby cried. Footsteps echoed closer. Then I heard it. Rebecca's voice. "Excuse me, I'm looking for my son. Room 304, please." Suarez's eyes widened. She silenced the phone and whispered, "She's back. We need to go. Now." I bent quickly and kissed Joey's forehead. "I'll see you again soon, sweetheart, I promise." His hand clutched mine for a second longer, then let go. We slipped out the side exit just as Rebecca's silhouette appeared at the end of the hallway. She moved like a woman used to being noticed, heels sharp, expression calm and confident. Her mask of maternal concern was firmly in place. In the elevator, Suarez held up her phone. "Not perfect, but it's something." He said it in his own words. I nodded, though my heart ached. That a child had to carry such secrets, secrets that made him sick, secrets that cost him sleep, strength, innocence, was a wound no hospital could stitch. As we exited the building, the rain had stopped. The streets were wet and reflective, the hospital lights mirrored in every puddle. Suarez walked ahead, speaking into her radio. I stood beneath the overhang for a moment, staring back at the building that had always represented healing to me. Now it felt like a battlefield. The question pounded in my chest, louder than any monitor. How do I protect them when no one believes me? And deeper still, why did it take me this long to see what was right in front of me? "We're not just fighting a mother," Andrew said quietly, his hands braced on my kitchen table. "We're fighting her performance." The morning light spilled through the blinds in long stripes across his face, making him look older, wearier. We hadn't slept much the night before. He'd spent hours organizing documents, printing medical records, highlighting email threads, anything that would convince a judge that Joey and Lily were in real danger. I thought of the way Rebecca smiled for the judge during our first hearing. Composed, pleasant, even sympathetic. It was the same expression she'd worn at Michael's funeral. Her tears had stopped right after the service. But the smile? That stayed. Polished, controlled, unnatural. "She's good at seeming good," I said, clutching a warm mug of tea. "And I'm just an old woman with shaky hands and a voice that cracks when I'm angry." Andrew met my eyes. "You're also a pediatric nurse with 40 years of experience, a mother who raised a good man, and the only one who saw what was happening. That counts." I wanted to believe him. Margaret showed up around 9:30, a paper bag of cookies in her hands and a gleam in her eyes. "I called the elementary school," she said, pulling off her gloves. "They need volunteers for cafeteria duty. I signed up." "You did what?" I asked, stunned. "They don't know me. I'm a warm body who can hand out chocolate milk and smile at children," she said matter-of-factly. "No one notices old ladies. That's our power." Andrew chuckled, but I saw the admiration in his eyes. We'll need eyes on Joey at school if he returns. Good thinking. The doorbell rang and Detective Suarez entered like a gust of wind. Quick steps, phone in hand, eyes already scanning the room. "I've got something," she announced, dropping a stack of pharmacy printouts on the table. She's been filling Ipecac prescriptions under different names. I traced at least 3, all within a 10-mile radius, all recently. I picked up one of the slips. The name was different, but the handwriting? That was Rebecca's. "She's covering her tracks," I said. "Poorly," Suarez replied. "But she's confident no one's watching. That makes her dangerous." My phone buzzed on the counter. It was Tara. "Rebecca plans to leave the state after Lily's release. Says she's going to her mother's in Arizona." I read the message aloud. Suarez's expression hardened. "She's trying to flee before a ruling can be made." Andrew was already pulling his coat on. "Then we don't wait. We go to court today." "But Peterson won't listen," I reminded him. "He already—" "We're not going to Peterson," Andrew interrupted. "Judge Hernandez is handling emergency petitions today. I'll file for a hearing." The courthouse felt colder than it had just a few days ago. Maybe it was the nerves, or maybe the growing weight of everything we were uncovering. The waiting area smelled faintly of old carpet and metal. Phones rang behind glass partitions, and legal clerks shuffled past with arms full of manila folders. I sat in one of the cracked plastic chairs while Andrew spoke with a court assistant. Suarez paced nearby, scrolling through messages on her phone. The courthouse clock ticked too loud. Every second felt like a lost opportunity. "She gets out of the hospital this afternoon," I whispered. "If Rebecca takes her before we're granted a hearing—" "She won't," Suarez said, glancing over. "We won't let her." Andrew returned 10 minutes later, breathless. "We have 15 minutes with Judge Hernandez. She'll hear us in an hour." "An hour?" I repeated. "That's the best we'll get without official charges," he said. "But she's tough and fair. Let's hope she sees the truth." Suarez looked at me. "We need every piece of evidence you've got. The emails, the notes, everything. Where are they?" "My house," I said, already reaching for my purse. "I'll go," Suarez said. "You stay. Don't leave this building. If the judge wants you, you need to be here." I handed her my keys and she disappeared into the hallway. An hour later, we stood outside a narrow courtroom on the 3rd floor, our documents now in a tidy binder. Suarez's hands still smudged from sifting through my desk drawers. I could feel my heart hammering behind my ribs. I reached for the doorknob just as my phone buzzed again. Rebecca just left the hospital with Lily, against medical advice. The words hit harder than a slap. "She's on the move," I said, turning the screen toward Andrew. He didn't say anything, just knocked on the courtroom door. Inside, the lights were soft, the judge's bench polished and high. Judge Hernandez looked up as we entered, her silver-streaked hair pulled back, her eyes sharp behind small wire-rimmed glasses. She said nothing at first, just gestured for us to begin. Andrew launched into the timeline. Joey's symptoms, Lily's unexplained hospital visits, the pharmacy records, my handwritten notes, the audio recording from Joey. Suarez stepped forward with the stack of evidence, including photos and charts from Dr. Lewis. When Dr. Lewis's letter was read aloud, even Hernandez's brow furrowed. "This is deeply troubling," she said, her voice low. "But we are missing one critical element, the children's current location." "We believe she's en route to Arizona," Suarez said. "We can intercept her with proper authorization." Judge Hernandez nodded. "Give me 5 minutes." As she left the bench, the clock ticked louder again. Each tick was a question. Would I be believed? Before it's too late? 5 minutes felt like 50. When Judge Hernandez returned, she didn't waste time. "I'm granting a temporary emergency placement order. The children are to be taken into protective custody immediately. Law enforcement is authorized to act." Relief washed through me, but it didn't last long. Suarez was already dialing her radio. "She's moving now," she said into the phone. "We have authorization. Intercept immediately." Andrew touched my arm. "She'll be stopped," he said. But his eyes were still scanning, still searching for what came next. Rebecca's silver SUV was already pulling out of the hospital parking lot when Detective Suarez flipped on the siren. The sudden shriek of it sliced through the morning air, sending birds scattering from the rooftop. Gravel sprayed as Suarez accelerated, blocking the exit just in time. From the back seat of Rebecca's vehicle, I saw a flash of white, Lily's hospital gown. She sat slumped, tiny and pale, her knees curled to her chest. Her face turned toward the window, and for a moment our eyes met. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stared, her expression blank with fear. I remembered the day Lily was born. Michael had cried when they placed her in his arms. "She's so tiny, Mom," he said, voice shaking. "How do you even hold something that precious?" Now that same child was being driven away from safety by the one person everyone had trusted to protect her. Suarez stepped out of the car, her badge already raised. "Rebecca Crawford, stop the vehicle and exit immediately. I have a court order." Rebecca slammed the gear into park and threw the door open. Her composure, so carefully crafted for judges and teachers and neighbors, was gone. What remained was something raw, unfiltered. "You can't take them," she shrieked. "They're mine." Hospital staff had begun to gather at the edge of the lot. A security guard hovered nearby. One nurse covered her mouth with her hand. They all knew Rebecca, the generous donor, the devoted mother. No one had seen this side of her, until now. Suarez held her ground. "You are in violation of a court order. Step away from the vehicle." "I won't," Rebecca shouted. Her eyes were wild, her hair beginning to come undone in the wind. "You don't understand. They're sick. I'm the only one who knows how to care for them." I moved before I knew I was moving, around the car, past Suarez, toward the back door of the SUV. My hand closed around the handle and pulled. Lily looked up at me, her eyes glassy. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said gently. "You're safe now." She flung herself into my arms, and I staggered slightly under her weight. She was so light, too light. Her hospital gown flapped in the breeze, her bare legs covered in goosebumps. "Grandma," she sobbed against my shoulder, "Joey's hiding. He took the medicine again. He said he didn't want to go back. He's in the garage, behind the Christmas boxes. Mommy said you were going to take us away forever." I held her tighter, her words sinking into me like ice. "I promise," I whispered into her hair. "We'll find him." Suarez gave the signal. Within moments, 2 officers closed in on Rebecca, who was still screaming, her voice cracking with fury and fear. "You'll regret this," she howled. "All of you! I'm their mother! You think this changes anything?" Her arms flailed as they cuffed her, the metal glinting in the morning light. Her designer coat slipped from one shoulder, exposing the carefully hidden bruises she'd given herself to elicit sympathy during court hearings. The mask had shattered, and what lay beneath was no longer possible to hide. Police radios crackled. Backup was already en route to her house. Suarez didn't waste time. "Go," she barked into her phone. "We need units at 17 Marigold Street. Search the garage. Back left corner, behind the storage bins. 9-year-old male, possibly unconscious, exposed to toxic substances." I climbed into the back of our car with Lily still clinging to me. Her body trembled against mine. I tried to wrap her in the hospital blanket they'd thrown in after us, but she wouldn't let go. "Where's Joey now?" I asked softly. "Hiding," she whispered. "He said it burns going down, the special medicine. He didn't want to take it, but Mommy was mad." My throat closed up. Suarez jumped into the driver's seat and peeled out of the lot, leaving behind the chaos of Rebecca's arrest. Her screams grew fainter in the distance, drowned out by the static of radios and the rising murmur of the crowd. The ride back to the hospital was silent, except for Lily's sniffles and the low hum of the engine. Every second that ticked by felt too long. If Joey had taken another dose, I couldn't finish the thought. Back in the ER, nurses rushed Lily into an examination room. I waited just outside, pacing the corridor, my palms clammy, my heart beating a punishing rhythm in my chest. A nurse passed me and paused. "They're stabilizing her. She's going to be okay." I nodded numbly, grateful, but it wasn't over. Inside, I was shaking. On the outside, I stayed composed. I had to be. For Lily, for Joey, for Michael, whose voice I could almost hear saying, "Thanks, Mom. You always knew what to do." But this wasn't like scraped knees or broken arms. This was poison, and I still didn't know if I was too late. The question burned in my chest as brightly as any siren. How do you undo years of pain in a single rescue? I didn't know the answer, but I knew we had to try. They found him. Detective Suarez stood in the hospital doorway, her face pale but calm. He's alive. Barely. But alive. The breath I didn't realize I'd been holding collapsed out of me in one trembling exhale. Lily, curled in my lap on the hospital bed, looked up with wide, tear-glossed eyes. "Joey," she whispered. "He's on his way here now," Suarez added. "Paramedics said he was dehydrated, disoriented, but he responded to their voices." I kissed Lily's temple, fighting back tears of relief and guilt all at once. The last time I'd kissed Joey goodnight, just a month ago, he'd whispered, "Promise you'll always be here." I'd promised, and I had nearly failed. The next hours passed in a fog of fluorescent lights and beeping monitors. Joey arrived at the ER curled up in an ambulance stretcher, his cheeks sunken, eyes closed. But when the nurse gently rubbed his hand and called his name, his eyelids fluttered open. "Grandma Candy?" he rasped. "I'm here, sweetheart," I whispered, gripping his hand. "I'm right here." Later, when he was stable enough to speak, he told the pediatrician, "Mom said Grandma was coming to take me away forever, so I had to hide." He paused, but the medicine made everything blurry. I sat beside him as he drifted into sleep, clutching my hand with his thin fingers. In the hallway, Suarez updated me with quiet determination. "Michael's case is officially reopened, based on Rebecca's arrest, her diary, and the new medical evidence. I think we'll find more." I nodded. It was justice coming late, but not too late. The next morning, we were back in court. This time, the atmosphere was different. No pretense, no manipulation, just facts. The room was smaller than before. A social worker stood behind me, and Andrew sat beside me with calm resolve. Judge Hernandez looked at me over her glasses. "Mrs. Miller, you've done what few have the strength to do. Protect children when no one else would. The court grants you full legal custody of Joseph and Lily Crawford. Support services will be made available, and follow-up evaluations scheduled." A weight lifted from my shoulders. Not completely, but enough to breathe again. "I'd like to say something," I said, rising slowly. My voice was steady now. "I'm 80. I have arthritis in both knees, and sometimes my memory skips a beat. But age doesn't disqualify love, or experience, or clarity." I paused. I was always here. They just stopped seeing me. Even the court clerk paused their typing. Outside the courthouse, the sun warmed my shoulders as I stepped into a future I never expected. At home, the spare bedroom was transformed. Margaret had dropped off stacks of picture books and paperbacks. Andrew, sleeves rolled up, was tightening bolts on a new bunk bed, while Lily bounced excitedly beside him with a new stuffed giraffe. Joey lay on the couch with Margaret watching cartoons, his color returning. We had music on low, Frank Sinatra, at Joey's request, and the scent of peanut butter cookies filled the air. That evening, after dinner and baths and brushing teeth, I tucked them into bed beneath matching quilts I'd found online just days before. "Grandma," Lily asked softly, "why did Mom do all those things?" I smoothed her hair. "Because she's sick, sweetheart. She made some very bad choices, but none of it was your fault. Will she get better? I don't know, but you will. Both of you will." The lights dimmed, and I sat between their beds, listening to their breathing slow, their bodies finally resting without fear. Joey stirred once, eyes barely open. "Are we safe now?" I leaned over and kissed his forehead. "Forever," I said, "if I have anything to say about it." Later, I stood in the hallway watching them sleep. The soft thump of a book closing came from the living room. Margaret had dozed off reading. The wind brushed gently against the window panes. All around us was peace. At 80, could I start over? Or maybe I already had.